But before we move off Trump, we've got a policy question. Gwen, you talked to Ash Carter, Secretary of Defense. Let's listen to what Donald Trump said about women in the military. Women in the military.
Right.
You said in 2013, you said 26,000 unreported sexual assaults in the military, only 238 convictions. What did these geniuses expect when they put men and women together? Now the Pentagon has opened up all combat to women. What do you think?
Well, it's a very tricky subject. You know, I mean, you're in there and you're fighting and you're sitting next to a woman. I mean, now, they want to be politically correct, they want to do it. But there are major problems. And as you know, there are many people that think this shouldn't be done at a high level, at a level of general. I think that it's a very tricky situation. But on Fox today, they had a woman who was a pilot, top level, very good, really indicating that this is really something that is not going to work out. Will it work out? I hope so. I can say this, the numbers of rapes in the military are through the roof. Through the roof.
Gwen, Trump said major problems. There are the Marine Commandant is not as supportive of this.
No, he happens to be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff now, Joe Dunford, who was not in favor of this. But using that reasoning, I'm sitting here as the only woman at this table. I should feel very insecure, right? Because you put the man
I've never seen you be insecure, Gwen Ifill. Don't. Sorry, okay, nobody's going to believe that.
Okay, but this is my point. You put a man next to a woman, and what? Rapes occur? I mean, that's the reasoning here. The point that Ashton Carter made, the Secretary of Defense, is that this means that women can compete for these roles. They can compete to be Rangers, they compete to be Navy SEALs, but there's no guarantee they will be that, just like you can't guarantee that a man would be able to do these things. So what they're doing is opening up. I mean, women have already been in combat roles, ground forces, since Leon Panetta did this. This is expanding it. There is some disagreement, as you would expect, at the Pentagon.
There are problems military-wide with reporting sexual assault. That has been the case no matter what, and there are plenty of women serving in uniform who, for whatever reason, are not comfortable reporting it. The last time there was a big social change, remember, was the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. The Marines were the same ones that expressed concerns. We've seen no real documented proof that it's caused unit cohesion issues. And so that, I think, is why Carter and others at the military feel comfortable moving on.
Ben, let me ask you a question back on the question of politics. Ted Cruz had basically assumed Donald Trump would fall, as many other people did. He hasn't. Is there a coming Cruz-Trump Donnybrook?
You know, I'm not sure. I think that right now, Ted Cruz certainly sounded a note of real challenge to Marco Rubio this week, went after him, compared his policies on Libya to Hillary Clinton's in a very unfavorable way. I think we're at the beginning of what might be an interesting period of debate about the foreign policy of the nation, and it actually helps Ted Cruz to have Donald Trump sounding sort of similar notes on the outskirts to be the more reasonable looking, a presidential candidate in the lane. It's a sort of a situation where you have to pick your poison for the establishment Republicans, and Ted Cruz's resume looks a little bit more like a presidential candidate's than Donald Trump's.
I'll tell you what Ted Cruz has done very cleverly, which is, first of all, he has a base in the evangelical community that Donald Trump doesn't have. That's not going to go away. He's also realized that there's a big set of primaries on March 1st in the South where the evangelical vote's very important and where he's going to do well. So if he does well in Iowa and then can carry that into the South early in the calendar, not late in the calendar this year, he's not in a bad position. But I agree with Ben that the real fight right now is between Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, interestingly enough, because they've decided they're in the same space.
And there's another element to that fight. Marco Rubio has focused on the fact that Ted Cruz was supportive of the legislation that took away the NSA's ability to get telephone records. What did we learn yesterday? That right now investigators can't get to the telephone records of the two people who committed this atrocity in California. You better believe
they can get to 2 years of them, not all 5.
Correct.
So they can still get to some.
Correct. But it doesn't matter. That's the argument that Rubio's been trying to make, and now he has great proof. Jeb Bush is beginning to make that argument as well. It will be a vulnerability for Cruz to explain why he was for that now, if he wants to be so tough against ISIS.
I don't agree with that. I think that Cruz is actually well positioned on that front. It's one of the reasons he's been able to steal some of Rand Paul's voters away by being a little bit libertarian on some of these things. And I think that also these phone records they're after action things. They're not as it's more figuring out what happened in the lead up to this as opposed to preventing these actual deaths.
Okay, Ben, Domenech, thanks so much. Gwen, the shrinking violet, thank you. Jerry, thank you. And Ed, I want to thank all of our panelists. We'll be back in a moment.